Hello and welcome to Khaleej Times. Today we have with us somebody who's been on this sort of a loop on our screens recently, whether it's a small screen, on streaming or the big screens in the theater. He's been everywhere. Tahir Raj Bhasin, thank you so much, Tahir, for joining us. I'm very excited to speak to you.
Hey, Somya, thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. And, I wanted to start with this little instance, sharing this with you. My father, who's an alumni of Air Force Bal Bharti in New Delhi, he sort of shared this with me when Yeh Kaali Kaali Ankhein released on Netflix on the weekend. This photo of you with a detailed biography going around in his alumni group, saying that, this person is from our school. And there was this sort of like this collective pride that I felt. You've been around since 2014. You did Mardani in 2014. It's 2022 now, almost 8 years. What do you think is different now? Or is there anything different now, I wanted to know.
First of all, big shout out to your dad. Thank you, sir, for taking pride in that message. And I'm so glad that work that I'm doing can bring pride to fellow Baffians. It was a very special time of my life being in that school because it really introduced me to extracurricular. And I think at a very formative age, when you're told that you can do something and good at something and you've got good teachers around you, it sort of can trigger you into doing fantastic things. Having said that, to answer the rest of your question, what has changed since 2014? I think back in when Mardani came out, you could either be a film star or you could be a TV star. We're living in this very fascinating hybrid time when it's the time of a hybrid star, and you can be doing a film and you can be leading an OTT series at the same time. And I feel like today the audience really decides who's a star and who's not based on the kind of content that you're putting out. I've had like the fantastic opportunity of doing a lot of diverse work in films, whether it's a film like Mardani or a film like Chichore, which are two separate genres altogether. And 2022 for me is just a year of romantic leads, because that's something that I'd never done before. And ironically, it would be my comfort zone because it's the kind of cinema that I grew up watching. I'm a 90s Bollywood kid. And so by Bollywood kid, I mean a kid who grew up watching Bollywood. It really fit like a glove. And I was so excited to be doing it, and fortunate that all of it has sort of released in the span of 2 months, because there's so much diversity, even if you just compare Yeh Kaali Kaali Ankhein to Loop Lapeta.
Yes, for sure. Also like just looping back to your childhood, if I could ask, when did the acting bug bite you? Because your father was in the Air Force, right?
Right. So when your father is in the defense, you move cities every 2 years. And that was very disruptive as a kid because you lose friends. This is pre-Facebook and pre-social media. And so the only constant in my life used to be the movies. So I often say that movies were my permanent friends. Now, that's not as sad as it sounds. I did have friends in real life, but they were like the sense of permanence. Like they were the escape in my life. And they were like this parallel world that you could escape into. And I remember when we finally moved to Delhi, I joined my first acting class. And that was when I was told by my acting coach, Barry John, that, hey, you're good at that. And I was someone who was I would say, an above average student. But when you joined a class and someone encouraged you, that's when I was like, hey, man, this is something that I could probably take up. And then from there on, it became like the college theater group. And I went on to study in Melbourne and studied film and acting. And thereafter started the Bombay journey literally from scratch, from sleeping on a friend's sofa.
Wow, and it's been quite a journey since then, and now you're here, you've arrived sort of, so to say. I was sort of like interested, you've mentioned this very candidly in other interviews, that you have been rejected from 300 odd auditions, and I wanted to know, like, if all those people are saying no to you, how do you say yes to yourself? Like, what was the self-belief or what was the dialogue in your own head at the time?
That's a really interesting question. No one's really put it to me that way. I think like having mind-numbing conviction is just one of the things that goes when you're trying to do something out of the box. Like you're going to have, and this is so true for not only being an actor, but if you're trying to be an entrepreneur and starting off something of your own, or if you're trying to be like a writer, a rapper, a radio jockey, anything that isn't considered by society as convention is going to have its fair share of skeptics. And you've just got to believe in yourself and, for lack of a better term, fake it till you make it. And that's what went on, where you would go back after not making it to an audition, see what went wrong, get inspired by other people who were doing well, by watching films, by reading actors or listening to their interviews about what goes into the process. Because I feel like in our culture, we're very good at celebrating the wins, but people rarely focus on the journey and the process of what it takes to get there. And that's something that phase in Bombay really has taught me. People refer to it as a struggling phase. I always prefer to look at it as the aspiring phase, because there's a little more positivity to that term, and it leaves the option of a silver lining at the end of it all.
Yeah, and rejection is just a very negative word. So it's always sort of better to stay away from it. But it also feels like the stars have kind of aligned in your favor in a way, because 83 was delayed. So it happened to come at the same time when you were getting like your OTT releases, and it's sort of like this 360 experience that the audience is having of Tahir Raj Bhasin. So how much do you believe in destiny, and how much do you believe in hard work? What's the percentage like?
50-50, to be honest. And really 2022 is proof of that, because you're right. I have now been shooting back to back for 2 years. And in September last year, if you would have asked me, I had no idea when these projects were releasing and if they were releasing anytime soon. And then all of a sudden, this announcement for 83's release happened, and then Loop Lapeta was bought by Netflix. Loop Lapeta was originally a theatrical film, and Ranjish, which had been in the cans for 2 years, and then Yeh Kaali Kaali Ankhein, all of it sort of aligned during the same phase. And what I'm really grateful for is that there's so much diversity just in these 4 projects. If you were to look at them, you can't slot them in the same genre. You can't slot the parts that I've done even in the same time zone. It's so that's incredibly gratifying, that work that you've done, because there's a lot of heart and soul that goes into a project. It's something that goes on for 7 months at a time, and just to have that, the fact that there's an audience excited to watch it, and now some even excited about a season 2, is just a phenomenal experience.
Well, I'm very excited about season 2. And also, in that sense, like all of your performances have been very diverse. And that's what's attracted a lot of people to you, I feel at this stage. But if, like your contemporaries, like Adarsh Gaurav have said in an interview where like he would, to prepare for a role, he'd actually work as as a person in a tea stall to prepare for a character like Balram in The White Tiger. Or you're on the flip side, your co-actor Tapsi says, that she's an untrained actor and she doesn't really have a formula. So what is your method to the madness? Where do you sort of fall?
I would say I'm a 70-30, where 70% you need to be prepped like really hard, and the 30% you need to leave to improvisation and what your director tells you. If I'm entering a world which is very far removed from my own reality, for example, Sunil Gavaskar in 83, because I'd never played cricket before, not professionally. I had only played gully cricket. Then I need to spend 7 months like a real cricketer, training with a coach every morning at 7 a.m., getting that stance right, getting that batting, just to get the physicality. Or Walt from Mardani, where I spent a considerable amount of time in red light areas, just experiencing that world. And I really believe that as an actor, you can't mimic. You can never be exactly like a drugs kingpin would be, or play an international cricketer. All you can do is try and get the essence of that world and give your own representation of what that is. And I think that's the artist's job, is that you try and understand the aura, the essence of that world, of that character.
And how much of it is mentally taxing, in certain, when you're playing darker roles like the one in Mardani?
It's in the moment, you're in flow. You feel that mentally taxing, almost like it's like running a marathon. You'll there's an adrenaline rush, there's a dopamine hit that you get during the process. It's perhaps at the end of that race or the next day when you really feel it. And it's like that at the end of a long shoot. Like even Yeh Kaali Kaali Ankhein, for example, it's a very emotionally turbulent role. And there could be a day when I'm starting the morning off with a happy scene with Shikha. In the afternoon, I'm shooting with Golden. And then in the evening, I'm having a breakdown scene with my father. And so that's quite something to put your mind through. And to live that for a consecutive 120, 150 days. By the end of it, you just want to like go on a solo trip somewhere and be in nature. And that's normally what my detox is.
Yeah, speaking about a journey as well, you started with playing this anti-hero, but now you're kind of like doing the romantic hero role. Unconventional still. I would say it's very
Yeah.
different to the romantic heroes that we have seen commonly in the 90s, growing up, where it's like picture perfect romance. Here it's like
Yeah.
there are nuances, there are shades of gray. In Loop Lapeta, you're being saved by the woman. It's very sort of like, it's very modern day kind of romantic hero, right? What is your idea of the modern day romantic hero like?
The challenge, I have made a career out of choosing disruptive roles, and I hope the goal really is to maintain that streak and not let uh, the market decide, or not let, like, if something does really well, then just try and recreate that over and over, because I want to keep the audience engaged. I want to keep myself excited about what I'm committing to. And for me, what makes all of these roles that you've just described nuanced or layered is that there is a flawed humanness to all of them. Like, Satya is vulnerable, he's a lover boy, but he doesn't know how to express that. And it's in expressing that he often makes the mistakes. And it's in trying to rectify those mistakes that he makes even stupider mistakes in what he does. And it's that relatability to him that makes him endearing. And there are a few parallels that I could draw perhaps to 90s heroes, where if you look at Amir Khan from Rangila, or Shah Rukh Khan in Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na. These were the term for them back in the day was the flawed hero, where you didn't have all the smart lines and you weren't the most confident person in the room, yet there was something charming about you. And that's really the sort of tonality that I liked about Satya, is that he thought he was a romantic charmer, but he really didn't have game. And it's his vulnerability to that and how he crumbles under pressure that makes him that you relate to him.
Relatable, very true. And but your Instagram bio reads authenticity over approval. Now that the approval is in plenty, the validation is there. How far is it still true? What changes right now for Tahir?
The challenge is how to live up to the expectation of an audience while maintaining that authenticity, and I hope to God that I retain that. And I do have friends and family who are closest to me, who are my biggest fans, but also my fiercest critics. And if they find that something is going slightly, of course, I do hope that they pick up the phone and tell me that, hey, this doesn't seem like you. And that really is the challenge. Is how do you grow as an artist but remain the same as a person?
Yeah, and we will hopefully see that in your journey going forward. But also in my recent conversation with Madhavan, he mentioned this very interesting thing that when you're doing television and movies, you're localized to a certain region, the audiences of that region. But when you're on OTT, you're suddenly pitched against international content. The world is your oyster. You're being compared to like some of the best sort of running shows online. How important is it for you to sort of like stand the test of the international foregrounds when your craft is considered? Is that something that plays in the back of your mind because you're sort of like on OTT now?
It's honestly a happy byproduct, and it's not something that plays on my mind. But I was completely overwhelmed when, after the release of Yeh Kaali Kaali Ankhein, I was getting messages from South America, from Japan, from UAE. And of course, you hope that the audience will read, because it's such a heartland India story. That what you're making it, keeping in mind how large the Indian audience is. But if you can reach out to someone in South America or in South Korea and they've related to the human emotion behind that story, there can be no better feeling. So I mean, it makes me feel very proud that you can take a distinctly authentic Indian story, of course, with its fair share of Bollywood masala thrown in, and make it relatable. And I think that's really exciting, that you go out to 190 countries and there's expectation now from an international audience.
Do the tricks differ based on the platform when you're sort of preparing for a theatrical release or OTT?
Do the what differ? Sorry.
Do the sort of the tricks of the trade. So when you're trying to prepare for a role, or the way that you're essaying a character, is that sort of based on the kind of platform it's going to, or it's completely detached from it?
Right. No, the analogy that I really like to give is it's like cooking, right? Like, so you need to know the basics of what goes into it. But whether you're cooking for 3 people or 15 people, you're going to have to go through pretty much the same process on a different scale. So all that changes when you're looking at a theatrical film. A theatrical film is often shot between 40 to 50 days. but a OTT, a web series, because of the number of episodes, will be 150 days. So you've got to just be that comfortable with the craft that you can hold on to a character. Your endurance, the number of hours you shoot is that much more. But the basic ingredients is the same.
Yeah. And I've noticed that you love giving analogies. One of the recent ones that you mentioned also that I came across was this sort of analogy of being an outsider in Bollywood, where it feels like you're skydiving from an airplane and kind of free
Right.
falling and hoping
Yeah.
that somebody catches you or you land on your 2 feet, So how do you feel? Where are you in this journey right now? Have you landed on your feet? And if you have, then where do you intend to go from here?
I am a couple of years, just extending that analogy, I think this was with the conversation with Barkha,
Yes.
where you jump out of an aircraft and you're just hoping without a parachute and you're hoping that someone grabs you. A couple of years ago, YRF grabbed me when I signed Mardani. And I feel like I'm nearing the surface and the parachute is just about open. So the challenge really is going to be that, do I land on my feet? And that's what the next few months is going to be. And that circles back to your question of, can you maintain the authenticity? Can you maintain disruptive parts that you do and face all of the challenges that come with the acclaim that is what Luke Lapeta and Yeh Kaali Kaali Ankhein are getting at the moment.
Thank you. Best of luck for your future.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Somya.